In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do.
Recording is in progress.
Ask what you can do.
Yay. Sweet Taylor, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm on my third beer, so feeling pretty good.
Good for you.
It's
I'm
6
drinking
o'clock
coffee
here, though.
and wine. I know, but it's Sunday. I don't know. It's fun. That sounds fun.
Yeah,
I
right?
haven't had a beer in a long time. I put beer on my grocery list because I imagine that there's some like Oktoberfest available these days, and I love a Sam Adams Oktoberfest. So that's what I'm hoping
Taylor,
my husband will come back with.
there are a lot more exotic varieties these days than that one.
I know, but I'm talking about my Walmart, my local Walmart. And I
Sorry.
just want to see him. There is actually a convenience store here that allegedly has like a secret beer room that like has a bunch of cool beers. So I guess I could go there, but or I could also just go to the Walmart and get a Sam Adams.
I mean, how do you ask? You can't just say I want into the secret room, you know? You gotta find a more creative way to get in there. Maybe you just
I
show up
gotta
with a
look
bunch
cooler.
of cocaine. Just show up with a bunch of blow and say, "How I'll trade you this blow for, some exotic beers." Maybe I'll let you in that way.
And they'd be like, ma'am, we take debit cards and credit cards. What is wrong with you?
Also, this is powdered sugar, ma'am. Yeah, no, I'm getting into it because
It's
now
delicious.
in our local stores you can start finding the pumpkin spice variants of different
That's what
kinds
I'm
of beers.
saying.
It is a blast. I love it
Yes.
absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and kick things off. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where we cover one historical, one true crime story about something that is doomed to fail. I'm Farge, joined by Taylor, who is getting excited about October and Oktoberfest and Oktoberfest beers, and I'm trying to get her to take
This is
powdered
Halloween. This
sugar
is Halloween.
to the grocery store in exchange for beers. That's where we're at now. So,
I don't know. We'll figure that out. Well, let's
We'll fig-
workshop that idea.
workshop that idea a little bit.
Mhm.
So Taylor, today I think true crime goes first. Is that right?
It does. Indeed.
Okay. Do you want to let me know what you're drinking? Coffee and red wine? Is that what the flavor is?
No, and you know what I'm talking about today, kind of. I'm talking about a couple things, but because I gave you some homework, so we'll talk about that later. But I am drinking, imagine, a beautiful crystal decanter that's empty, and then you turn around and look in the mirror, and in the mirror, it's full. Dun, dun, dun.
Taylor's topic today is like the
Dun, dun, dun.
most interesting, dope, cool thing ever, which you won't hear until Wednesday. But this is the only time I've ever actually kind of known what Taylor's going to talk about, and I have to admit, it is awesome.
I was
So
gonna
excited
say,
for that.
if you know anything about me, you know that I love this, but we'll get there.
There you go. There
It's
you
very
go.
exciting.
I, on the other hand, so I was drinking a pumpkin-y spice variant of a beer, and then I ran out of them. It said I drank all of them. It said there wasn't that many left because I drank a bunch earlier this week. So now I'm drinking a
Fair.
Voodoo Ranger, which is Juice Force. It is an IPA that tastes very fruity.
That's awesome. Good for
It
you
has
for all
nothing
those
to, no,
fancy beers that you have.
nothing to do, yeah, all the fancy beers. Nothing to do with the story whatsoever, but I wanted to just let y'all know that I do enjoy a nice beer. So let me start. Are you ready, Taylor?
I'm so ready. I can't
Are you
wait.
ready? Are you
I'm
ready
like
for this
super excited.
intrigue?
I've been working. I don't know why. I've been like all done today, just kind of like fuck around the house and pick up trash that's on the floor in the house and work on this. I'm just like, I'm ready. I had a great Sunday. It's like a nothing day.
Dude,
Love it.
so the same. Also, maybe this is like foolish pride coming into effect, but I think we're getting better at this because like I'm like
Well, I've been
finding
doing it for a long
things.
time.
Well, I've been doing it a long time. Like I'm like things come up and I'm like, oh, that's a story. Like you know what I mean? Like your brain connects it with things a little bit differently now. Mine does.
I love it. That's awesome. And I hopefully have some new listeners that I'm going to talk to at the end of that episode.
Sweet.
You go. Keep going.
I'll go.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
going to the outline. So, my topic today is not even remotely obscure. It is incredibly well covered. It is a
Hmm.
little oldish, sort of, and it's also not really a crime. But
Great.
so it hits on
Perfect.
nothing.
I'm
It's
ready.
on absolutely nothing. But it is kind of topical. So, as some of you
I'm
may
in.
have heard, the federal government was about to shut down at midnight today, this is Sunday, if Congress didn't increase the debt ceiling or issue a stopgap emergency funding until the debt ceiling could be raised. Congress avoided this by passing the stopgap funding bill, and the president signed it into law. And so now the shutdown has been avoided for about 45 days from now. This got me
Great.
thinking back to another situation where the government actually did shut down, and it had huge unintended consequences for the country and history at large. Taylor, do you know which situation I'm talking about?
Not off the top of my head. Are you talking about the one in the 90s?
Yes.
Wait, are you talking about the air traffic controllers?
No. But I did listen to that daily
Just tell me.
episode as well. Okay, fine. That was the 80s, by the way. That
Um,
was not the 90s.
I know. So maybe I do remember in the 90s when the government shut down, my dad was like, let's go to a national park. So we went to one and like jumped over the fence,
I
which is
love the
a very my
ingenuity.
dad thing to do. Yeah.
Ingenuity of parents. Yeah, I totally get that. So the story that I'm talking about and the story I'm going to be covering, which I'm going to do in a way that's not boring. So when I say the topic, don't shut off the podcast because I won't do it in a boring way. I promise. I think the story I'm talking about is the Monica Lewinsky scandal and the downstream consequences that occurred as a result of it. And
Whoa.
I'm going to compartmentalize my story yet again into acts. So, much like my contemporary William Shakespeare, his plays were all 5 act stories, not 3 acts. So mine's gonna be 5 acts. So in case you're gonna come at me saying there's no such thing as a 5 act story, William Shakespeare did it, so why the fuck can't I? So I'm gonna do a 5 act
Do you know
story
what the word? Go ahead. No,
with the word
I
what?
don't think contemporary is the right word. You guys.
Is he my contemporary or am I his contemporary?
Contemporary means like at the same time, doesn't it?
Oh,
Okay,
does
never
it?
mind. Keep going.
We're both artists. That's the main
Yeah,
factor.
that's living or occurring at the same time. But you're both artists, and you both wear really fancy collars. So I think that's also a thing.
Thanks.
I'm just kidding. Bars is wearing a tank top.
Fars is barely dressed.
I have no proof that you're wearing pants, but that's fine. I don't need to know.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, fine.
So my act again has 5 parts. Act one is the setup. Act two is the deed. Act three is the convergence of 100 investigations. Act four is the impact. Act five is re-examining the events 30 years later. So that's what we're getting into.
I'm
Again,
so excited. I love the story. It's wonderful.
it is. Have you, Taylor? When was the last time you went back and revisited this story?
I mean, I feel like Monica Lewinsky is on Twitter and she's hilarious. And I did not watch the American Crime Story Monica Lewinsky
I
one,
didn't see it either.
but I wanted to. And I don't know. I think about it every once in a while.
It's fascinating. It's actually really interesting. Like, so
Yeah.
we were young. So Taylor, I think you. So hold on. I would have been 11 years old. So you've been like 13. So like we were
Yeah.
old enough to kind of know and pay attention to what was going on, but the details of it
Yeah.
you don't really understand. What's really funny is like as I was
Mm,
going through this whole thing, I'll explain this in a minute when I get to part four. No, part three. Um, Dude, you totally can see all the crazy shit Trump said about Hillary Clinton and how people who were older back then would have like looked at this situation and like just zoned in on her completely because like
I
17
know, it's
different
so
scandals are
unfair.
happening it's totally unfair and there's 17 scandals happening at the exact same time and like us when we're kids we're like oh the president got a blowjob it's like who gives a shit right but then you look at like if you're old enough you're like oh all this other stuff is kind of wrapped up into it let me get into it I'll get into the
Yeah.
details so
Okay, I'm ready.
Act one, William Shakespeare, the setup. In 1985, Bill Clinton was president and Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House. Do you remember when we met Newt Gingrich?
I was gonna say I do. That was probably the weirdest 15 seconds of my life.
Dude, I thought
Where
he
he
was
just like
like
came
kind
into
of
our
charming.
office.
Like he just like walked
He
in like,
was.
"Hello,
No.
nation
He was like, hey
builders."
guys, keep doing what you're doing. And we were like, what is happening?
We're trying to
What
dismantle
is
the seat
happening?
of power, and you are the seat of
Oh my
power.
God. Oh my God. Yeah, no, it was bizarre,
Random shit.
to say the least. Yeah.
So obviously, Bill Clinton, a Democrat, Newt Gingrich, a Republican. Newt and Bill were obviously at odds with each other, given the partisan difference, and also for an incredibly petty thing that ended up happening to Newt that basically
What?
spurred all
I'm
of
just
this.
kidding.
I'm going super back in time here. So in early November of 1985, Bill Clinton boarded Air Force One along with delegates and other American leaders, including Newt Gingrich, and they took off to Israel to attend the funeral of the Prime Minister of Israel up to that point, Itzhak Rabin.
Okay.
During this flight, Bill would not talk to Newt. He's the Speaker of the House. He's third in line for the fucking presidency, and they won't even talk to him. Like he won't even give an audience to talk to him in the middle of a budget battle that has to do with the debt ceiling. Bill's like, nope. You can hang out in the back. I'm gonna be in my executive suite. Go fuck yourself. Don't want to talk to you at all. They land in
I love
Israel.
that.
It is so petty. They land. This story reminded me that like we're all humans and we all do shit like this. They all
It's
land
so
in
good.
Israel, and Bill won't let Newt come down the stairs. He has to go out with the cargo in the back of the fucking plane. Like it is so obvious that this guy's trying to show that I'm the president and you're fucking nothing to me, even though he's literally third in line to be president.
Which I just was re-reminded of this week that the Speaker of the House was third in line, and like, okay, great to know. And two, I love it. I love that. This is my favorite story. I
Okay,
would I love doing that to someone. Being like, you're important enough to be on Air Force One with me to this like really important thing, but also fuck you.
it's like I wish I one day have the privilege to flex like that on somebody, which I never will, but still it'd be really
Exactly.
fun. So
But I love it.
this came out like years and years later that Newt, because of this experience, this fucking funeral for Itzhak Rabin, had this axe to grind with Bill Clinton, and the debt ceiling discussion was coming due in November, and he was like, you know what? This is going to make him look worse than it's going to make us look. I'm going to put preposterous expectations in our debt ceiling discussions, and if he doesn't meet them, we're not going to approve it. So he started doing things like we have to slash the budget for education, for Medicare, for Medicaid, all standard typical Reagan era Republican stuff, right? And obviously Bill's like, I'm not signing this. Like, no way, there's no chance I'm going to sign this. And so Bill calls the bluff, doesn't sign it, and the government shuts down. So the idea that Newt had was that the public would hate Bill for this. We'll look like heroes because we tried to negotiate. All that, right? It's all politicking, right? So
Yeah.
at that point, what that means is that federal employees are not asked to come to work because the government shut down. And if they did come to
Mhm.
work anyways, they would get paid. But do you know who could come to work? I'm
Interns.
pointing at Taylor. Yes, interns. Unpaid interns to come to work.
Is that why? Okay, first of all, unpaid internships are bullshit. That's unbelievably ridiculous, and only rich people get them because only rich people need fucking money, don't need money, which I think is just incredibly annoying, and incredibly unfair. Like I had people that I knew that like were like, oh yeah, I worked in the Obama campaign the whole entire time for free, and I'm like, well, fuck you, because I have to eat, and I don't have
Yeah.
a fucking trust fund. So continue.
Uh, so speaking of which, I put literally the third sentence in here is going to talk about this. So thanks for the precursor.
Great.
But we're going to
I'm
move on
passionate
to
about it because I'm mad because growing up poor, I didn't have those opportunities, and it pisses me off. Continue.
yeah, same. Okay, so we're on to Act
Yeah.
2, Shakespeare the Deed. So we're going to start by introducing the most famous intern in U.S. history, Monica Lewinsky. Okay. So this literally goes to exactly what Taylor just said. Monica was born to a wealthy family and grew up in Los Angeles. She attended Bel Air Prep with fucking Will Smith and
Amazing.
Carlton. Like,
Yeah.
That's where she came from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she did not come from like casual,
Mm-hmm.
chill, like upbringing, right? And
Yeah.
then after she graduated, she went on to Lewis and Clark College, which in my mind means that she basically went to a nothing college, get a nothing degree, which we all did. I got a political science degree. It's a nothing degree. We all know what it is.
Art history, no big deal. Keep going.
You know art really well though. You actually do still pay attention to it, so it did come in handy somehow.
One time we were on the elevator in an art history in like an art museum, and Juan asked me a question, and I was like, there were other people on the elevator, and I was like, I don't want to answer that question. He goes, but you have an art history degree, and I was like, you're embarrassing me in front of these strangers on this elevator. It was like, I was unhappy. Keep going.
Taylor, this was like decades before I met you, and we didn't know each other, but I recall that moment in the elevator. It was like that girl does
Mm-hmm,
not know
mm-hmm.
her art history at all.
No idea.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
So her parents were friends with a guy. This Taylor, stories like this, when you have like a fleeting memory of something, it takes you down so many rabbit holes because you kind of remember this thing. You kind of
Mm-hmm.
remember that thing. Okay, so her parents had a friend named Walter K. Walter was a retired insurance exec, a fucking millionaire somehow, who donated prominently to Democratic campaigns. I I used the Wayback Machine to find a CNN article from 1997, like literally the start of the internet, like the first article probably published on the fucking internet. I found a CNN article about Walter, and it said that he donated somewhere around $300,000 or so. The Open FEC doesn't go back that far, so I just have to go off of like their word that like that's what it was. It was like over $300,000, which today doesn't really sound like a lot of money. I did the math on it. It comes out to about
Mm-hmm.
$690,000 in today's cash. But that's actually not the important part. The important part is that in 1986, as an example, the average U.S. House race only cost $493,000 to win. In '96, like, dude, those are like, I mean, I don't even know what that is. Like today, an average house race has
Yeah.
like a $3, $4, $5 million race. This guy was able to contribute on his own enough to get like almost someone elected to the U.S. House. So like he was a big deal, right? And her
Yeah.
parents, Monica's parents, were friends with this guy, and that's what happened. Walter made a few phone calls to D.C. and got Monica an internship in the White House, working for Leon Panetta. Do you remember that guy?
I don't, but I feel like I
He,
should.
he was director of the CIA under Obama.
Oh my God, amazing.
But at the time under Clinton, he was chief of staff, so he was like the equivalent of like Rahm Emanuel under Obama, basically. If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
remember that?
Ugh, I do.
It's so incestuous. I love reading this show because all these names come up. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. So,
I have a great Rahm Emanuel story. Do you want to hear it?
yeah, please, always.
He used to come when I worked at a hedge fund. He used to come to the office because the hedge fund owner was like a Democratic donor, so he would like talk to Pelosi on the phone and like whatever. Rahm Emanuel came one time in the woman I worked with. You're supposed to be like, would you like coffee or water or anything? To the people who come into the office. And Rahm Emanuel says, yes, I'll take a fruit salad, please. And she was like, okay. So she went into the kitchen, found some fruit, chopped it up, put it in a bowl, and she like brings it into this meeting. And our hedge fund CEO is like, what is this? She's like, here's your fruit salad, Mr. Emanuel. It was just like so freaking funny that she'd like make one and that was like not an option. She's like, you want coffee? He was like,
Dude,
yes, I'll take a fruit salad.
that's awesome. Like you can do that when you're rich. You
And
can just ask for anything.
whatever you want. And later he was like, he needed a room to like have a private phone call. So I put him in a room and like nine Secret Service people were like, what did you do with him? And I was like, I put him in that room so we could have a quiet conversation. He asked me to. And they were like, okay. And everybody like freaked out. And I was like, I didn't murder him. I just put him in a room. He has to be goes over himself.
Hey, could you see that he didn't have fingers?
He doesn't know. Does he not have fingers?
Or he may be missing one finger. I forgot what it is. I think he's missing at least one finger because he worked at like his parents' like
Ooh,
butchery or something, and he cut his finger off. Did you not notice that? I guess
gross.
not.
I did not know. I wish I would have known in advance so I could have looked for it. I didn't know.
We started with Newt Gingrich being slighted on Air Force One to Leon Panetta to Rahm Emanuel. Like we are. This is exactly where the direction I was hoping this conversation would go because it's all interconnected. It's all
I love the story.
interconnected.
Keep going.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're talking about July of 1985. Walter, who is Monica's parents' friends, calls Leon Panetta, says, I need to get this person a internship, and we do it. 4 months later, the government shuts down. And hilariously, like Bill has nothing to do. Like he's just like wandering around the Oval Office, wandering around the White House. Because like Congress isn't in session. There's nobody there. It's just him, the president of the United States, because he lives in the White House, and all these unpaid interns who have nowhere else to be but the White House. That's how it all happened.
Oh my God, I'm laughing out. Do you also remember throwback to your Phil Hartman episode? Because remember
Yes,
the Phil Hartman where he's like at the McDonald's and he's like trying everybody's food?
yes. We got to re-release that one.
It is so funny. I'm gonna get there, but it's gonna take me a year to re-release. Whatever, keep going.
I know, I know,
But
I
that's
know.
just
I see
amazing.
it.
Please watch that.
Like that's basically it. Like he just wander around the White House. Like he has no work to do, and he would never interact with staffers normally, but there's nobody else there, so he's interacting with staffers. Given that there is nothing to do, he starts interacting
Oh
with
my God.
Monica, and they start developing a relationship. Look, I am not going into the sexual stuff because, like, I really do not want to say blowjob 50 times. But like, they start a sexual
Sure, we
relationship.
know.
It was like, yeah, we all know what happened. Um, he's 49 at this point. She's 22. So let's keep that in mind. Power
He's the
dynamic.
most he's the most powerful man in the world. Yeah, it's not good. It's not a good
There's a
look, Bill.
slight power dynamic differential here.
Yeah, yeah,
So again, we all know what happened from here. The relationship lasted about 18 months. It lasted from like 1995, late 1995 to 1997. By all accounts, she and Hermine thought she was in a very real relationship with the president of the United States.
yeah.
It's worth noting that she did this before. So for 4 years, from when she was 18 until this moment, she was also in a relationship with another married man who was one of her professors in college or something. So like she does like to, mess around with married people and older people, it seems like. So
Sure.
anyways, we all do. We all do. I get it. In April of 1986, those around Bill noticed that he and Monica were too friendly and spending way too much time together, and they arranged to have her transferred to other
Yeah,
departments in the cabinet, and she ended up going to work for the Pentagon. Do you remember Bill Richardson? He literally just
I
died. You
love
remember
that.
him?
I do. He was a governor of New Mexico,
He was
right?
also, yeah, but under the Clinton administration, he was also the director of some other agency. It's all interconnected. It's so crazy to me
Wait, how is Bill Richardson connected to this?
because he
She worked for him?
offered her, yeah, no, because he offered her a job because the other guy I mentioned earlier, oh God, what was his name? Leon Panetta. Leon Panetta asked Bill to give her a job in his cabinet because he was like, the president's just like way too flirty with this 22-year-old, and
Yeah.
Bill offered her a job and she refused. Later, they were like, no, this isn't optional. You are being transferred to the Pentagon, or you can not be in the federal government at all. And she's like, fine, I'll go to the
I
Pentagon.
do. It does have to be a lot for them to be like, this is too much flirting for you, Mr. President.
Dude, people noticed. It's
Like
creepy. Like he acted like a little boy.
The Bill Clinton flirtation scale is like the Richter scale and like the volcanic explosivity index. Like it is ridiculously high. And then
It
it gets
ramps
like
up.
higher and higher that people die.
It ramps up fast. We are now at Act 3, which is entitled The Convergence of 100 Investigations. Okay, again, I didn't write this in the outline. So when Mueller took on the Trump investigation, do you remember
Hmm.
the constant calling it of a witch hunt?
Hmm.
Okay,
By Trump?
the well, in every Republican, right?
Sure.
But like the reason for that kind of approach to it is this. It is what ended up happening with Bill Clinton because you know what? I'm just gonna get into it. Okay, we're in Act 3, the investigations. So it's at the Pentagon when Monica starts working there that she meets someone who I fucking hate. Like, I think she's one of the worst human beings that's ever existed. Her name's Linda Tripp.
Uh,
Before
she's the
I get
worst.
into her, I'm going to start with the investigations. In 1984, before any sexual relationship started with Monica Lewinsky and Ken Starr, a guy named Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, an investigation was started by a lawyer in DC named Ken Starr, who was appointed special counsel or independent counsel to investigate the Clintons. He was going to take
Also a piece of shit.
over. Also a piece of shit. Actually, Taylor, just so we're clear, Ken Starr was also Trump's lawyer during the one of his many indictments. I actually don't. It's hard to keep track. Like, dude, it's crazy how interwoven all this stuff is. So Ken Starr took over an investigation into a thing called Whitewater from another guy.
Mm-hmm,
Dude, it's incredible. Whitewater is basically the gateway drug to every Clinton conspiracy theory. You start at
I know.
Whitewater, you
I
end at
remember
Jeffrey
hearing that
Epstein.
word.
Like, it is. There's so much shit in the middle. There's a lot of shit in the middle, but like that's the starting point. So I'm gonna really quickly do an overview of Whitewater because that is the other reason why all this ended up happening. So in 1978, Bill is the governor of Arkansas, and a guy named Jim McDougal and his wife Susan proposed to the Clintons to buy about 230 acres of land in Arkansas together so they could develop it into vacation homes. They'd already done
Okay.
other real estate dealings. They had a pre-existing relationship, all that. Like, it was already established. But shortly after they bought the land, but before they started development, the economy stagnated and interest rates spiked to 20% for homes. So nobody's buying a vacation home, obviously. So here's part of like the mystery. Like, nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows. I'm just telling you what is like roughly out there. Okay. The TLDR is that the way it looks is that the Clintons lost about $40,000 on like a multi-million-dollar land deal, and the McDougal's lost like everything. And so the assumption is the Clintons gave them something because it was a 50-50 joint partnership. So in a joint partnership, you each give 50-50 of something. And what they provided was political backing and favors and access to additional loans for interest payments to the McDougal, so they weren't in the hole for the entire half that they owed. That's
Was
the
it
rough cut.
while he was president or while he was governor of Arkansas?
Governor.
Okay.
So
There's a book that there's a book about Hillary Clinton. It's a kid's book, and Miles told me I'm not allowed to read it anymore because I cried the entire time. Because I'm just like, I'm so inspired by her. I love her so much. I'm so sorry she's not president. And then I started crying. And then I remember how I woke up after she lost to Trump, and I had like my face was like red, and I was pregnant, and I was like covered in tears. And Florence was like 2 years old, and she was like wiping the tears off my face, and I was like, I'm so sorry, Florence.
okay, so here's one thing as I went further down this rabbit hole was I kind of see the genesis of all the Hillary Clinton conspiracy theories. Like, see
That's
where
fair. My
it
dad has
started.
one. Yeah. Yeah, totally. There's
Because
something. Yeah.
she was like fairly powerful as a first lady, and like I'm gonna get to this in a second. So the Whitewater, is that what's it called? White House? What is it called? Whitewater. Yeah,
Wait,
Whitewater.
wait,
So
wait. Oh my God.
so Whitewater is the genesis of everything. So in 1984, they're like the Clintons did something shady, which like honestly, there's no evidence, nothing's been proven, but you'd have to be like insane to think that like there wasn't something happening there because like there's like it's just weird. It's just
Sure.
the dynamic's weird. So something probably happened there, but because of that, that's where the whole witch hunt thing with Trump like becomes like a reality. It's like they used Whitewater to explore anything involving the Clintons, which is the witch hunt part of it, right? So in addition to Whitewater, that one land deal segued into the death of a guy named Vince Foster, who apparently he committed suicide, and then people on the right think that the Clintons had him killed. That's one guy. There's a thing called the White House Travel Office controversy. This is where Hillary gets like super involved, which is like basically it's called Travelgate. The Clintons basically fired a shitload of people in the travel office of the White House and just like installed their own family and friends and paid them to like work there. There's a White House FBI file controversy. Hillary's also involved in this one, apparently. So that was called Filegate, and that's where senior White House staff granted access to the background reports pulled by the FBI for previous staffers that worked at the administration. Nobody knows why. They're like about 300 to 400 were exposed for reasons that they can't justify, basically. And then finally, the thing that actually matters in this case, And where Ken Starr's investigation led him to was the Paula Jones case. So Paula Jones was a staffer working for the government of Arkansas while Bill was the governor. And at some point, Bill whips his dick out. Bill's just like, I don't know. There was no, he just whipped it out in front of her. And then ultimately, the Clintons settled with Paula Jones for $850,000. And then later on, Paula Jones is very famously trucked into the debates with Hillary Clinton by Donald Trump, which is like absolutely ludicrous. Do you remember this, Taylor?
Wait, did Trump invite her?
Yes! Yes! She sat with his daughter.
That is so hilarious. Of course. That's hilarious. I can't with that. I keep going.
We are the Jerry Springer of countries.
I love that for us. Every country is a Jerry Springer of countries. I feel like if you think people are inherently perfect, you're wrong.
I think I'm inherently perfect, but others are wrong when they disagree. So,
with the exception of you.
With the exception of me, thank you. So that is the winding trail that Ken Starr's investigation took that led us ultimately to Monica Lewinsky. We're still in Act 3, people. Act 3 is is going to be it's only like 2 more paragraphs. Lawyers for Paula Jones wanted to show a pattern of behavior on the part of Bill Clinton that demonstrated he had a habit of propositioning women who worked for him. So during depositions, obviously, it's like. Dude, so I didn't even bring up Jennifer Flowers. There's a whole nother side lawsuit with Jennifer Flowers. Do you remember that name?
Yeah, remember the War Room? Did you watch the War Room?
No, that sounds
that
dope.
documentary with George Stephanopoulos, where it's like the end of it's like the very, very end of the thing. It's where like the Raging Cajun, what's his name, does like it's the economy stupid
Carville,
and it's
James
like very
Carville.
exciting. Carville, yeah, and then but in the end, like when it's like election night, someone calls and they're like, we have all this proof that Bill Clinton is having all these affairs, and George Stephanopoulos is like, is this how you want to be remembered as the person who stopped this Democratic president from being president? Like you look at yourself right now and you decide if you want to release this, and the person didn't, and it's great.
Was it accurate?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know.
Well, okay. So I'm going to talk about this too because Larry Flint of Hustler fame also got hyper invested in this. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the lawyers wanted to show that Bill had this propensity. So during depositions, they basically named off a bunch of people that worked like relatively closely with him, including Monica, saying, "Have you ever had a sexual relation with this woman?" And Bill said he had not. That was on deposition, which means that he fucking perjured himself. Right. And this is basically where we can reintroduce Linda Tripp. So in 1997, Linda Tripp is 49 years old, and she works for the Pentagon. I know you hate that I bring age into this, Taylor, but it's important that Linda Tripp was fucking 49 and that the girl she's talking to is like 21 years old or 22. That part is relevant.
Weird. No, totally. I definitely like I'm 41, but there's people at my work who are like 22, and I'm like, I could be your mom, but we're fine. But yeah, and like we hang out, but I don't like, you know what I mean. Linda Tripp was like being a creep.
She was being a creep. She was a total absolute creep.
Yeah.
So I will uniformly hate her no matter what. So her and Monica became work friends because they both worked at the Pentagon. And that's when Monica, they had like little lunch get-togethers where they'd take a break and go have lunch together. And Monica confided in Linda that she had a sexual relationship with Bill. Actually, the relationship was ongoing because it had been going on for about 8 months after she got transferred to the Pentagon. That she would go over there, they would do stuff, and then she would go home. Linda, somehow, some way, I don't know why, but she knew that during a deposition, Bill had said that he had not had a sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky. And so what ended up happening is that Linda had been in touch with a literary agent because she wanted to write a book. And the literary agent, when she found out about the Monica Lewinsky situation, said, record Monica Lewinsky, and you have your book. And so she recorded her private conversations with total bitch. She recorded her private conversation with this fucking 22-year-old talking about like, I mean, she was in love. She was in love with the president of the United States. Like she recorded these conversations, and then she took them to Ken Starr and handed them over, and then boom, there you have it. The first allegations. By the way, long story short, is that he gets impeached. Everybody knows that. But this is the only time that anybody has been impeach at the federal level, whether it's judges, senators, Congress, anything, any position, is the only time that someone's been impeached for a thing that was unrelated to the thing that was being investigated. They were investigating Whitewater. They ended up
Right.
impeaching him on perjury on a fucking sexual harassment claim. There was a civil case that had no criminal element to it. Crazy. I'm
He
not
just
taking
didn't
this
want to.
side. I'm not taking this side, but I still think that he got railroaded a little bit. But that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't say like, yes, I did that because like Americans don't love that. Fine, but like,
Yeah, your wife's not gonna be happy either.
she's
So
not happy. She knows.
she
Hillary's
knows.
not an
I know.
idiot.
I know.
But yeah,
She married Bill. She knew what he was getting into.
yeah.
So yeah. So the House impeaches him. He's the first president in like 200 years or whatever to get impeached. There was a 21-day trial held in the Senate. He was acquitted. He remained in office and all that good stuff. Act 4 is called the Impact. Less than 2 years after the impeachment was the 2000 election, which at the presidential level was Al Gore, who was Clinton's vice president, versus George W. Bush. This is all speculation. But there is a thing that researchers came up with, which is called Clinton fatigue, which, Taylor, I feel like we lived through because our equivalent today is Trump fatigue, which is hearing about this guy constantly, never having a moment to kind of rest. Back then, there was a phenomenon known as Clinton fatigue, which was their way of delineating, like, people were just tired of hearing about it. And when you think about, like, what got Bush into office, it's like a few hundred votes. Like, it was, like, nothing. Like, it is very,
Hmm.
very possible that just being associated with Bill was enough to get people to, like, move away from Gore and towards either not voting or towards Bush. Also, you wouldn't remember this, I doubt, but like Gore asked Bill not to stump for him, which is like incredibly rare. It is incredibly rare to not
Mm-hmm.
have your running like the former president stump for you for your party. Like it's incredible. Like, but that was part of the calculus that Gore made. Was like people are tired of hearing about you. So the impact of it is that we might have not had George W. Bush, which is like crazy to think like what would that have meant for Obama and then Trump and then everything else that came downstream for that. The other side of this is that Larry Flint of the Hustler magazine fame, he
Hmm.
put out a $1 million bounty because he was so anti-Republican. He put $1 million bounty on any number. If you could provide evidence that anybody who was in office at the federal level on the Republican side was in an affair, he would give you $1 million for that information, and it
Oh,
worked.
nice.
It worked. So that is part of the reason why Newt Gingrich, when he was up for re-election, decided to walk away because he was having an affair with some random woman while his wife had cancer and was dying. And then,
Oh my
remember,
God. Of
if
course
you
he
remember
was.
that, yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty. And then there was another guy whose name I forget, but he was supposed to be next in line after Newt Gingrich stood down the speakership for the Speaker of the House role, and Dennis
Uh-huh.
Hastert got it. The guy who like is like a known pedophile and rapist of like little like not I mean he was like a what
Ugh.
was he like a wrestling coach or something? Like, a horrible sex offender basically. Like so much weird shit happened as a result of this, and so many people came into office and into power that probably shouldn't have. The impact on Monica was, in my opinion, way worse than that on Bill.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
she ended up writing a book with a biographer for $500,000, which was the advance. And then she made about $1 million doing a Barbara Walters interview for 2020. She would do random sponsorships. She did a Jenny Craig sponsorship where she was supposed to get paid $1 million. People didn't like her as the spokesperson, so she only made like $300,000. She ended up like bouncing around from place to place. She ended up moving to London. One thing I would say, this is a really bad situation. Like it is horrible to be like that is your reputation. Like your name is Monica Lewinsky. You are forever known as this person, right? It
Hmm.
could have happened to someone in worse circumstances because again she came
Again,
from this
yeah.
privileged background where like money really wasn't a thing. It was more like it's one thing when you're like, oh, I really had ambitions of being like this successful person and now I can't
Hmm.
really accomplish that. it's another where it's like, oh, I really wish I could feed myself and have a house, but I can't even afford those things. Like she was never in that kind of a position. Like she was covered. Like she was good as far as that was concerned. It's just like
Yeah.
from a reputational perspective, it wasn't great.
And I think so. I don't know how much you're going to talk about this, but like I also think that like she did not obviously like deserve all of the shit that everyone gave her. And did you see the John Oliver where he apologized to her? Um,
No.
it's really beautiful because he's amazing, obviously. And he was like, well, why didn't you change your name? And she was like, Bill Clinton didn't have to change his name. Like why would I have to? Like that's not fair. Like, this happened and like I was a kid essentially and all these things. And then John Oliver, he shows clips of what when he was on the Daily Show, like talking about it and making fun of her, and he apologizes and he says, like, I'm really sorry. He's like, you didn't deserve the stuff that we said about you, like you were the victim. And she accepts his apology and it's very nice.
That's awesome. But like one thing I would say
Yeah.
is like I don't think that she necessarily sees herself as a victim.
No, she's fine. And she's doing like she says does funny things like one of her friends had like a 90s party and she came wearing a beret because that's funny,
That's great.
And like she's trying to like, she's fine. Like you said, like she's not someone who had to like work at McDonald's because her name was sullied. She
Yeah.
was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Like it's
now
not
like
fair, but she's also fine. Yeah.
right, right. Like now you go on Twitter, her tweets are fucking hilarious. Like she's actually like
Yeah.
she seems like a pretty cool person, which indicates like a lack or a level of fortitude that I think most people wouldn't have. I think if like that was your
Hmm.
name for the rest of eternity, like that would be kind of tough for most people.
I think it
But
took her a while, but I think she like is around to it.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I am rounding the corner for Act Five, which is re-examining the events 30 years later. So I
Hmm.
was reading a political article about the creator of a podcast called Slow Burn, where he was interviewing Linda Tripp to get her
Yes.
account of everything that was going on. Have you heard of Slow Burn?
I I have wait, I didn't listen to that one. I listened to the one before. Um, it might have been the Nixon one that I listened to. That one was
Possibly.
really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does a lot of political stuff. But
Yeah.
she was asking, or he was asking Linda about the Monica Lewinsky situation, and this is a quote from Linda Tripp during that interview, which was, "To this day, I don't believe she's accepted her victimhood. He was just using and playing with her and then disposing of a human being." And I
It
heard
sounds like
that
someone's a
part.
smidge jealous.
I heard that and was like, Linda, you did the exact same thing. You were 24 years the senior of a girl that you faked a relationship with, a friendship with, to record for your own benefit, to publish a book that you never wrote. Like, you know, like, it's just like so
Yeah.
tone deaf about like who she is as a person and what she ended up doing here that I don't know. I have like weird mixed feelings about Linda Tripp as a human. I think that she's probably well, she's dead, so it doesn't really matter. But like, she
Is
seems
she
like a
good?
fucking awful person.
She's terrible. No, she's terrible. I think she's a smidge jealous of like the fame and the attention that Monica got. And I think she just wanted to like get in someone's business.
Well, it's also worth noting. So she actually really hated the Clintons. So like that part, that's not a conspiracy theory. She actually like was
Hmm.
really she got into politics or she got into government because she was really interested in it, obviously. So she cared deeply. In that article, that political article, she mentioned that nothing that she wanted to happen was accomplished. She was supposed to get like some super expensive exclusive book deal that she never got. She was supposed to get the Clintons out of office, which she never got. Like you know, like she
Hmm.
had her own agendas that had nothing to do with. I'm just trying to help some poor girl who's 24 years my junior. Like, no,
No,
you're trying to
exactly. And she
exploit
probably
her.
was, I mean, exactly. Exactly.
That
Yeah.
was gross. And so yeah,
No,
she ended up
she's an
dying.
unredeemable character. She's awful.
100%, 100%. Um, but I don't know. The story itself was just really, really compelling. It was really interesting. It was so interesting because it starts with a government shutdown, it starts with Itzhak Rabin's death, goes to a government shutdown, goes to a land deal from the 1970s, goes to apologize. It's just crazy how it all happened.
Hmm.
And the doom to fail part is if you're a 49-year-old president, don't have sex with your 21-year-old intern. Pretty simple.
Yeah, please. Wait, how old was he again? 49?
He was 49 when they started.
Oh, that's young for a president these days.
Hey, can I ask a question? Like, I don't know if it's going to sound sexist. It's a good way
Okay.
to start. She also, like I mentioned, when she was 18 to like 22, she was also in a sexual relationship with a married, um, like instructor at her university
Hmm.
who was also in his like 40s. Like, is there like something there? Like, is that like,
I mean,
what is it like?
I was never attracted to my professors, but I do know women who were and who like would date their professors,
But I think,
and
but
that
I
was
mean,
like thing.
I mean more like it plays into like my perception that she's not a victim. It's like that's just what you like. You like men in power who are much older than you. Like, are you a
Sure.
victim?
I mean, I think she's a little bit of both. Like, I think, well, yes, she was probably a victim then as well. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like that power dynamic makes it hard to be 100% equal because like you're like, oh, this is like an older person who has a lot of power and they're, whatever, trying to make me feel special.
Right,
So
right.
they deserve more blame than she does, I think, in both of those scenarios. I think she's more of a victim of the US
Bill,
government, and the
right.
media and like the shit that they did to her with like Clinton, like whatever, but if it hadn't been, that perjury, it hadn't been like the lying about it, and if that wouldn't, I mean, presidents have had affairs for all time. Like,
I know they're kind of synonymous with
FDR,
affairs.
his problem wasn't that he was having affairs. FDR's, whatever. Like, it's not great, but it's not like the end of the world. And it got to this point because of the lying, but because they like made it such a big deal. In like the weird 90s where people were trying to like, I don't know, the 90s were weird, right?
I think so. I think so. Uh,
Yeah.
News wasn't entertainment yet, and this helped launch that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's my story. And we averted a government
That was super fun.
shutdown, so we're all good on that front. But yeah, just respect the power dynamics and don't fucking hang out with Bill Clinton.
That's kind of fair. I like him un until we find him on the Epstein flight lists and get some deets on that, you know.
I
Um,
mean, it's funny because like you don't have to make even a single leap in judgment to put him on Epstein
hmm
Island. With Bill Gates, you
Yeah.
have to like you have to be like, oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I
hard to
agree. Like
believe.
that
But like
guy.
with Bill,
No,
you're
I
like,
know.
he was there. Absolutely. I don't have to question anything. Like he for sure was there. And probably
It's
so was
horrible.
Trump
There
for
was
the
like,
record.
oh, 100%. There was some like another meme where I saw where it was like Republicans were like, what would happen if Bill Clinton was on Epstein Island? And it's like Democrats were like, throw Bill Clinton into the sun. Like if he did it, put him in
Yeah,
jail, like yeah, throw him into the sun. We don't care. Um, but
that would
yeah,
not be the other
yeah,
way
it's
around.
wild. That was a wild time to be around. I definitely think that's when we went to the national park and jumped over the fence.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the next budget shutdown is going to be in mid-November. So yeah, keep an eye out, which is exactly the
Can't
time
wait.
that this happened. So Joe Biden ends up having sex with a 21-year-old. You'll know that you'll come back and listen to this podcast and know exactly why.
Honestly, we'd all be a little bit impressed,
That would be amazing.
but
Um,
but I don't think he is. I think that we're probably fine there. Other things maybe, but not that.
yeah, yeah,
Not
fair
that.
enough,
Yeah.
fair enough. So Taylor, do you have anything you want to read off for the listeners before
I
we
am
hop off?
hoping I'm hoping we have some new listeners because I boosted one of our reels and it got a ton of views and we have a ton of new followers on Instagram and I boosted a reel about your last episode about Sarah and John Macon and that one's been listened to a ton. So I'm super excited that new people are listening and I hope you're still here with us today. Thank you. We are at Doomed to Fail Pod on all the social media and also on YouTube. You can find us there. And you can send us an email. It's doomtofailpod@gmail.com, and we will answer your questions. If you have questions, ideas, thoughts, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
One caveat: there are assistants will answer your questions.
Right, right.
Those letters usually don't reach me and Taylor directly, but keep trying, maybe one day.
Keep trying. Sure.
Sweet.
Cool,
Well,
thanks,
we'll go
Cyrus. That
ahead
was
and
fun.
cut the. Yeah, thanks. We'll go ahead and cut this off, and we'll rejoin you on Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.